Welcome, listeners, to www.ironradio.org, the website and podcast for all things strength sports and sports nutrition. With your hosts, Lonnie Lowry.
Remember, Phil is like a gnarled old oak tree held together with scar tissue and bone spurs.
Rob Fortney.
And I'm telling you, the pain that I would suffer was beyond excruciating.
And Phil Stevens.
Do it, Rob. You'll kill all those nerves.
Thanks for listening.
Good morning, everybody. Go to strengthguild.com, strengthguild.com. Scroll down to the Iron Radio collections, and we've got new shirts and new banners for you to support the show. Everything from just a regular banner, regular shirt, to ones with sayings on them, like Lonnie's Phil is like a gnarled old oak tree shirt. And some news for you, we're going to have some contests for people who own these shirts and things. So if you support the show, we'll let you more on that later. So if you get in on these early, you can be one of the first people to win some prizes. So thank you very much. Go check out the site, strengthguild.com. Scroll down to Iron Radio Collections and support the show.
Welcome, Iron Radio listeners. This is Lonnie Lowry here again. I am a licensed nutritionist, professor of about 20 years, and a former competitive bodybuilder.
And this is Phil Stevens, strength coach, powerlifter, Highland Games athlete. I run Strength Guild, and like we talked about last week, I would do other stuff for people in the fitness industry. So, what's his name? Gabby and Sean, I do believe it is, reached out to me about those patches that you brought up. So,
right, that's a cool idea.
Mm-hmm.
Sean reached out again, even further, and he was kind of showing me some examples and stuff. So, yeah, that's a great idea.
Yeah.
All right, everybody, it's just me and Phil today. Mike, because he still travels so much, I mean, the pandemic is going to mess with that sometimes, so
yeah.
He'll have to join us next week. I do have a couple of bits of news, and then after the break, we're going to do some Iron Radio news, really, about our new forums. We're actually going to create some Iron Radio forums. It's not meant to be some, giant Reddit-like thing with millions of people. It's just a sort of a private, low-pay forum, and we've talked over the years about why you have to have this even nominal amount of pay. It keeps the bots out and the spammers and all that stuff. But I'll let Phil explain that after the show, or after the break. Let me share a couple pieces of news here. It's really building up, so I at least want to get 3 of these off my plate.
Strength and muscle sport news.
This first one is not brand new, and I don't know how this came across my screen. Mike, I think, has mentioned this before, and maybe we'll get his input next week, too. This is from the American Journal of Physical Medicine and Rehabilitation 2016 by Ferraresi and colleagues. Effects of LED therapy, so light-emitting diode, on muscle hypertrophy, gene expression, performance, damage, and DOMS, delayed onset muscle soreness, a case control study with a pair of identical twins. Now, we may have even touched on this in years past, but I don't get it. Photobiology like this is, to me, really out in left field, and I'm almost sure Mike has brought this up in years past, but the aim of the study was to verify how a pair of monozygotic twins would respond to LED therapy versus placebo when combined with strength training program of 12 weeks. Now, my first thought was, what do you mean, like a tanning booth? No, these are actually flexible, almost think like knee sleeve or a heating blanket or some heating pad maybe, and they just lay it over the muscle, and it shines light directly onto a muscle. Like, not kidding. So let me go right to the paper. This case-controlled study enrolled a pair of male monozygotic twins allocated randomly to LED or placebo therapy. The light-emitting diode therapy or placebo was applied in the form of a flexible light-emitting diode array. It looks like the time that they shone the lights, pulsing them or shining them or whatever, was 15 seconds to both quadriceps muscles of each twin immediately after each strength training session. So they lifted 3 times a week for 12 weeks, consisting of leg pressing and leg extension exercises with a load of 80% for the leg press of 1 RM and 50% 1RM, I guess, for the leg extensions. And that would kind of make sense. I mean, who wants to do super heavy leg extensions? I guess they could have a role, but not exactly a giant mass builder there. Let's see. Muscle biopsies, magnetic resonance imaging, maximal load, and fatigue resistance tests were conducted before and after the training program. And again, looking at gene expression, muscle size, performance. The results. The light-emitting diode therapy increased the maximal load in exercise and reduced fatigue, reduced creatine kinase. So a lot of our listeners know that's a blood marker, a damage marker. And visual analog scale, presumably for soreness here. Gene expression analysis showed decreases in markers of inflammation, like interleukin-1 beta, that's an inflammatory cytokine, and decreases in markers of muscle atrophy, meaning myostatin, again, when they were treated with the light-emitting diode. So remember, these are twins, so we're looking at, like, gene differences are not in the picture here, just the presence or absence of this direct onto the skin and muscle light therapy. It says protein synthesis, mTOR, and oxidative stress defenses, SOD, that's just a naturally occurring endogenous antioxidant, were upregulated with the light-emitting diode therapy, together with increases in thigh muscle hypertrophy. What? Light-emitting diode therapy, in conclusion, can be useful to reduce muscle damage, reduce muscle pain, reduce atrophy, and to increase muscle mass, as well as recovery and performance. These are some heavy claims, man. I did notice that there was a quote-unquote comment to this article when I looked on PubMed, right, in the National Library of Medicine. So maybe somebody's saying, whoa there, Tex, that's a extraordinary claims you're making, and that would require extraordinary evidence. Have you ever heard anything like this, Phil? Or do you remember talking about it? The LEDs, like little mats or flexible things right on your muscles?
No.
Absolutely bizarre. Yeah, it's, photobiology. I mean, I guess it could be a thing. I don't see why it couldn't. I'm not educated in this field. And this is a 2016 paper. But listeners, if you've ever seen these like little, pads or whatever, flexible pads that you place over your muscles to try to enhance recovery or muscle size, I would love to see this. Presumably, either this is too early to be marketed, or if it's post-market, maybe it doesn't work quite as well as
didn't pan out.
Yeah, as they're thinking here from this, because it's sort of a case study, right? So
yeah.
I don't know. I just wanted to make listeners aware of this stuff. It seems like it'd be, if it wasn't expensive monetarily, it'd be a minimal investment, lift and then slap this thing on your quads and, I don't know, see if you get bigger or you're less sore. I don't know. I don't even know where to go with that. It's so outside of the, it's not nutritional, it's not training, but if something's going to, just with 15-second pulses or, beams, going to make you bigger and recover faster, that could be amazing. So maybe we'll just check in with Mike on that.
I just ordered some full spectrum lights for my office, just so I can get, they're basically like sunlight. So when I'm down in my cave, I get some actual light on.
Oh,
me.
yeah.
So they're expensive, but I was like, I'm going to do it.
Those like happy lights or like UV lights, I get it, man. I mean, my wife has one of those little things that she can sometimes puts on her desk. And I think we actually brought this up with Mike last time we touched on this one. Like I said, this just came back across my desk. But I'm like, oh, you mean like through your eyes, like to affect your pineal gland and your hormones and your mood? And he's like, no, like directly on your muscles. And I'm just thinking, how much light can penetrate through your skin and your fascia? But maybe quite a bit. I don't know. I don't know. I'm going to look around on this, too. I mean, this could be freaking remarkable, but I'm skeptical. So
yeah.
I'd rather do it the way Phil and I do it, lift and eat a lot, repeat. Tried and true. But, yeah, they're, I'm not anti. I'm going to try to stay at least a little open-minded.
Yeah.
The next two are for our lifters that might be a little fluffy. If you are overweight, you're just a large mammal. Both of these have to deal with that. Have to do with that. This first one was a paper some of the other professors were talking about. This is brand new stuff, like literally days old. Obesity's poor health impact is not overcome by exercise. Now, the reason this is news is because in the past, we've told people, listen, if you're physically fit or active, it's really going to undo a lot of the problems with being overweight. But this new paper says not so much. So this is from Lab Roots and Carmen Leach. I actually might reach out and get her on the show. She's a really good science journalist. She's educated in this stuff herself, so she's not going to, screw up correlation versus causation or, say that some new study proves this or that. So thank you, Carmen Leach. It says, while there has been limited evidence that activity and fitness can counter the health impact of excess body fat, a new study suggests that exercise cannot overcome the negative effects of obesity. This is in the European Journal of Preventive Cardiology. It's a Spanish paper. They looked at 527,662 working adults. A quote here from study author Alejandro Lucia of the European University in Madrid. He says, one cannot be fat but healthy. And again, academics have debated this for the longest amount of time. We know that exercise chronically has like some anti-inflammatory effects. I mean, God knows not acutely when you're sore as hell, but over time, chronically, it's going to do a lot of things. It improve your cholesterol and just a whole bunch of things, blood pressure. It says, our study sought to clarify the links between activity, body weight, and heart health. The people had an average age of 42, okay, so they're not kids, and 32% were women. The researchers classified the participants in the usual way as far as their body mass index. So if your body mass index is between 20 and 24.9, so low 20s, healthy weight, right, normal weight. Upper 20s, up to 29.9 would be overweight, and then obese would be 30 or higher BMI. And again, we're talking weight for height, right? Kilos of body weight over your meter squared in height. So a few details here. About 42% of the study participants were normal weight. Now, this is something a colleague of mine just said right out of the gate. Well, that's obviously Spain, not the U.S., because I don't think 42% of Americans are normal weight. In fact, yeah, I've heard that 40% of Americans are obese, and about 3/4 are at least overweight. Yeah. So that would mean that there's only maybe 20 or 30% of Americans that are probably in this category. So, and I can tell you, being in Spain, I don't think I saw maybe one super obese person when I was there the whole time. I was only there for about a week, but you don't see them, limping around on the sidewalks like you do here.
Yes.
Anyway, it says they were grouped according to whether they were regularly active, insufficiently active, or just plain sedentary. And because of the numbers that they're dealing with, they're not going to have the kind of standards we would have, right? This is going to be a little quick and dirty and setting the bar pretty low. But they were considered regularly active if they had some moderate to vigorous exercise in a typical week. Then there were the people that got less than the recommended amount. And then, of course, the sedentary people did nothing at all. It says 24% were in the active group of these Spanish folks. 12% were somewhat active but insufficient, and 63% were sedentary. Damn. Now that's sounding more like the U.S., like doing nothing. What did they look at? They looked at cholesterol levels, high blood pressure, and diabetes. Let's see. For any body mass index and any level of activity, there was an association with lower likelihoods of diabetes, high blood pressure, and high cholesterol when you looked at the active people versus inactive. So regardless of how big you are, you're doing pretty well, right, compared to inactive. This makes me think about all these years as a nutritionist, right? I've looked at a lot of studies on deficiency diseases, right? You don't get vitamin C, you get scurvy, you don't get enough thiamine, you get beriberi. To me, physical activity, there's a real parallel here, right? If you don't get any lifting, any walking, that's a deficiency disease, right? Yeah. So it's just like with the nutrition, to me. The parallels are amazing. Anyway, it says, let's see. This tells us that everyone, irrespective of their body weight, should be physically active to safeguard their health. And then, of course, he says more is better. And again, this is where Gen Pop is different from us. More is better with physical activity, and his example is 30 minutes per day is better than 15 minutes per day. But obviously, Phil, in your gym or in the fitness world, if you say more is better without limit, you're going to have overtraining people just destroying themselves. Yeah.
5 hours of hard exercise.
Yes.
Yeah.
But, it says, regardless of how much activity they reported, people who are overweight or obese, again, body mass indexes in the upper 20s or over 30, regardless of how much activity, they had a higher risk of cardiovascular disease than normal weight peers. What are your thoughts on that, Phil? Like, I don't know. How would it apply to
sense.
your... Yeah.
I mean, it largely makes sense. I mean, but and I don't know. I mean, the big thing to me is, like, most big strength athletes I know are smart enough to know that the level of weight we're getting ourselves up to is not for health.
Yes. Right.
And we've accepted that. Like when Mark Bell, he's jacked and tan now, but when he was bigger, like, he wasn't doing it for his health. He wasn't, like, lying to himself saying, I can squat 1,000 pounds, so I'm in great shape. No, he was, like, pre-diabetic and everything else.
Right.
It was all about weight on the bar. That's all it was about. So to hell with health, let's do this. So yeah, it's not surprising to me.
Yeah.
I think the average person can get skewed and think that's not the truth. Like, oh, I'm in great shape even though I'm 150 pounds overweight. And no, you're not, dude. You can't just carry that around and expect to be doing okay.
Right. No, you're not. That's a good point. And you're right. The veterans, they know the price they're paying, to be really huge. Once I told Rob, I think he wanted to squat 750. I can't remember what it was, like a life goal, And I'm like, because he was getting really heavy. And I'm like, how far are you willing to go, bro? Yeah. Like, what price are you willing to pay? Because you're going to, you're already, I don't know what he was, 285 or something, and you're going to have to put on 30 more pounds. Can you even deal with that? So, yeah, you're right. And I think that's where people who listen to Iron Radio, they're going to get this perspective. We've been around enough big people, and you've even unhealthily jammed your weight ridiculously high. Yeah. That we're not going to pretend that there's not a price there, that performance is not synonymous with health.
Yeah, I mean, my last meet where I went in and what I ate up for that, hit my first 722 squat, and I mean, I was a cheeseburger away from a heart attack. I mean, I felt bad, but it was all in the name of that. But that's also, I'm getting older, and so it affects me more than it did. And that was also when I was like, okay, no more of that,
Yeah.
It's just too much now. So that's like right now I'm sitting at like 250, and I'm hoping at this meet I'll start eating them more and be 260. I'm not going for 290 again.
Yeah. Right. No, even on my much smaller scale, when I get over 215 at 5'9", 215 pounds, my blood pressure, I start getting hypertensive. I mean, my brother's got wildly high blood pressure, so that makes me worry a little. I don't want to have congestive heart failure when I'm 60, No.
Yeah.
So that becomes a temporary thing. Would I still routinely eat my way up to nearly 230? Yes, I would, right? And so, I don't know, I guess a doctor would say shame on you, but I had to put on that muscle mass if I was going to diet down and be in the upper 190s ripped, Yep. So, so there it is. You can't exercise it away. Probably not that surprising. And let's face it, body mass index we know is not body composition. If anybody's listening, like, somebody please say you guys are, you're talking about guys that are big because of muscle mass. That's true. The more muscle mass you have, more or less, the better you can dispose of the carbs you eat, because muscle's a nice gas tank for carbs. We were just talking last week about all the possible benefits of hypertrophy. So, yes, we're talking about guys. Are they over fat or gals? Yes. Hell yes. But they're also carrying kilos and kilos more muscle mass than the people in this study right here. So that's why we need to do population-specific stuff, right? Like, what's it like, yes, to have your body mass index ridiculous, like 35 or more, but you're also squatting 7 bills for reps, like that's a whole different population there.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm no medical doctor, but I mean, part of me can recognize that, I was born with the same heart, and I'm always going to have the same heart. It doesn't matter if I'm 165 pounds or 300 pounds. It doesn't matter if that 300 pounds is fat or muscle. You get up to 300 pounds, you're asking that same heart to do a lot of work.
A lot of work. Yep.
And just that isn't, you have to realize that just because you're lean and jacked, you're still putting some strain on things.
Oh, that's a good point. I'm thinking about purposely over fat powerlifters, right?
Yeah.
But you're right. I mean, don't tell me. Even in shape, Ronnie Coleman was cardiovascularly healthy. No, probably not.
Yeah. That's a lot of stuff for that heart to pump around.
Yeah.
The fluids, the excess fluids, all that muscle had to hold for the blood
too. Yes.
volume of his body. So
yeah, just the pressure to perfuse all the capillaries and all that tissue. Yeah.
Yep.
I had an advisor years ago, and he would always argue because, that's a time I was trying to take up more space. And I remember like one of my profs when I was a grad student, he's like, your head looks tiny compared to your big body. I'm like, this is how we do it, man. I don't know what to tell you. You're not used to looking at it. But the one guy says to me, Lonnie, it doesn't matter what you're composed of, right? If your body mass index is that high, that's a lot of, cardiovascular work, just what you're saying, Phil.
Yeah. And
I'm like, yeah, but it cannot be as bad as if it's just all pro-inflammatory adipose tissue.
Yes.
But he, I was acknowledging the point then, just like I will with you now. Yeah, even if you're lean, that's a lot of extra work. And I mean, how do we do stress tests to see if you need, if you're at risk of a heart attack or something, if you have like a, partially occluded coronary vessels or something. Sometimes they do it with meds, but oftentimes they just put you on a treadmill. That's what exercise physiologists do. They have you walk uphill increasingly steeply until the cardiac work is enough that basically you get angina. Your heart hurts, essentially. So that direct myocardial workload is going to lay bare the fact, right? It's going to expose the fact that your coronary tree is partly blocked.
Yeah.
And if you walk around all day long, well, you know what it's like, Phil. Like, literally, you just, and more so than me, I know you're taller than I am, but when you're really heavy for your height, you could get out on the sidewalk and your target heart rate just going for a stroll. That's a lot of work. I would challenge anybody who's listening and they're like, well, that's so unhealthy. It's like, listen, we all make choices. Warriors don't plan to live a long time. It's that kind of mindset. But yeah, that's a lot of workload for a heart that's a muscle about the size of your fist, like you said, almost regardless. Yep.
And that's, and like you're saying, there are going to be people out there that's selfish. That's a horrible goal. Well, it's my goal. Leave me alone.
My life.
Yep. And yeah, it's, I'm not hurting anybody else. And the big thing to me, as long as anybody, they set a goal and then you take a minute to realize it, like, okay, I want to do this. Here's the negative aspects of it. Take that time and let yourself know that, I might be shortening my life. Well, okay. I'm okay with that. I mean, the freaking fact is every time, I'm not immune to the fact, every time I walk into the gym and I squat 700 plus pounds, something could go terribly wrong. It could be over.
True.
When you're messing with that kind of weight, it just could be any day now. Boom. one false move, a knee goes, and the bar just falls on me, and spotters have 0.6 seconds to catch it, and they don't, and
Yep.
I'm dead.
Yeah.
So.
I will say this, Phil. I know you do it, and I know I've done it. That's why you have mesocycles and you cycle up and down body weight. Even guys, I talk to guys that they use anabolics. The guys who go on and stay on stuff that really takes a toll versus guys who cycle off. And again, same thing with body weight up and down, or the amount of weight that you're brutalizing your spine with. Yep. At least most of the wise people I know, they take note of moderation, right? There's a time to be balls to the wall warrior, big, performance, even if it's a little unhealthy, and then they try to do what they can to then ease the body weight back down for a couple months, man. Yep. Stuff like that.
And that's even when I got my hip and my hamstring injuries, and I was kind of forced into not doing much for 2 years. I really think at this point that helped me a lot. Mm-hmm. I needed those couple years of not pushing myself all the time. And I think a lot of connective tissue and things just healed up. And then after that time, I was able to get back at it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I needed that short break after 15 years of going hard,
Mm-hmm.
And then I was able to, nice 2-year break. Let's go again.
Right. Slowly repair, even nervous system stuff, just everything.
Yeah, just everything.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I got one more before we go to break. Also about large mammals. And when I say large mammals, I mean, that's a broad category. That's sort of an Iron Radio term, I know. Phil, I think that's your term. But it's large regardless. Yes, muscle, yes, fat. Yes to everything, you're large, right? But this one is related to the pandemic. And listeners, fire us an email through ironradio.org, or we'll talk about our forums in a little bit here. If you're sick of hearing about pandemic stuff, I'll just stop. But, this gets mixed in with the other science that I'm looking at these days. I mean, how could it not, So this one is about, lifestyle and how we eat and all that kind of stuff. This says, Western dietary pattern, antioxidant intakes, and oxidative stress. The importance during the SARS-CoV-2 COVID-19 pandemic. This is by... Man, these names. Trujillo Mayall. So Igor's his first name. Trujillo. If you want to look this up. It's Advances in Nutrition, spanking new. Here's how it starts. The importance of balanced dietary habits, which include appropriate amounts of antioxidants to maintain the immune system, has become increasingly relevant during the whole pandemic. Why? Because viral infections are characterized by high oxidative stress. So we're hearing, people are they're put in the ICU or put on a vent because of this cytokine storm and all this stress. So they looked at the Mediterranean diet and the Atlantic diet. Now, I'm going to be honest with everybody. I don't usually hear much about the Atlantic diet. It's sort of a Portuguese side shoot of the Mediterranean diet. And somebody can email and correct me, but maybe I'm pigeonholing it. But it's not the kind of thing you hear in everyday conversation. You hear Mediterranean diet all the time, but less processed foods, vegetables, seafood, et cetera, olive oil. And my understanding of the Atlantic diet is it's very similar. Some people point out that, that's an artificial construct. It's just basically the Mediterranean diet. So, okay, again, send us an email and yell at me if you think I'm being too judgmental, but... And then even the dietary guidelines for Americans. They all provide essential vitamins, minerals, and phenolic compounds. So when you hear of phenols, think tea. There's phenols in olive oil, that kind of thing. Antioxidants that aren't vitamins and minerals. And these are needed to activate enzymatic and non-enzymatic antioxidant responses. But it says, however, of course, the COVID-19 crisis brings this problem of high oxidative damage when you're infected. Let me just give you some numbers here as they look at these different diets and what they do and what they do not supply. The Mediterranean diet and the Atlantic diet are characterized by consumption of fruit, veg, legumes, olive oil, and whole grains with low intake of processed foods and red meat. Now, the red meat one, they always got to throw that in there. To be honest, when I was in Spain, at least southern Spain, it was pretty clear that jamon was a big deal. So I didn't see people shying away from the red meat necessarily. Maybe not like giant porterhouse steaks falling off either side of your plate. But anyway, the Mediterranean diet in particular provides the required amount of antioxidants per day for vitamins. But, this is only up to 3.8 micrograms a day. So, vitamin D. So, vitamin D, you multiply by 40 to get into international units. I like to do my vitamin D in IUs. So, that's only 150 IUs a day. That's not a couple of thousand. So, they say that that's adequate, but I don't know about that. Vitamin E, 17 milligrams. Vitamin C, it'll provide up to 270 milligrams per day. That's actually pretty good. Probably from tomatoes and, the fruits and vegetables. Vitamin A, 1,273 micrograms a day. Vitamin B12, up to 2 micrograms a day. Folate, over 500 micrograms a day. And then minerals like selenium, zinc, and iron. Now, selenium and zinc you will see in some antioxidant pills. So they say the Mediterranean diet on average will give you 120 micrograms of selenium, 11 milligrams of zinc. Now, the iron, I think that depends if you're a dude or a lady, to be honest, because most men that I know have excess iron unless you go donate blood regularly. But it says up to 19 milligrams of iron per day, and then manganese, 12.5 milligrams. And then they also point out the polyphenol intake is high. And of course it is. In my opinion, that's what's so good about the Mediterranean diet. You're getting a lot of this stuff like, the olive oil and the polyphenols. It says, however, all of these diets are still deficient in the recommended amount of vitamin D. Aha! So this is what I was kind of rolling my eyes at. So they're saying the recommended amount of vitamin D is 20 micrograms a day. So times 40, that's 800 IUs a day. And like I said, most nutritionists I know will tell you 800 IU is not going to be enough to change your blood levels. You're going to have to get 2,000 to 4,000 IUs a day, probably, and even then it might take several weeks. It says, therefore, vulnerable populations such as obese individuals could benefit from antioxidant supplements to improve their antioxidant response. So I don't know what listeners are supplementing these days. This time of year, especially because of COVID, I'm glad I'm getting I've actually upped it to 4,000 IUs a day of vitamin D. In some people, my usual 2,000 IU of vitamin D won't raise blood levels. It really depends on your age and probably genes and everything else. But I do get my low-dose vitamin C. I prefer just a 250 milligram vitamin C. If anybody's taking 500 or 1,000, you might be wasting that a little bit. I'm happy to, answer something on a forum or whatever. But low-dose C, yeah, I do that. I'll take low-dose, just 200 IU vitamin E a couple times a week, not every day, but there are some famous researchers, the Meydani, Meydani, and they're really pushing about 200 IUs of vitamin E. Vitamin E is sold a lot like vitamin C, though, in my opinion, overdosed. So 200 a couple times a week just to keep my immune system bolstered, and again, that's literature-based. So vitamin E, obviously an antioxidant, fat-soluble vitamin. Yeah, they say that even the Mediterranean diets will only give you 17 milligrams of vitamin E. That's okay. But again, yeah, I prefer to extra D, extra C, extra E, and then I do my fish oils and stuff like that. I wouldn't put that in the antioxidant category, but it's definitely anti-inflammatory. So even whey protein, listeners, if you're not familiar, can be beneficial. I've actually got a list of different things from studies that I pulled on my fridge of, nutrients I'm glad I take, and that if I do get infected with COVID, I'm going to ramp it up. My normal vitamin D, I'm going to increase that, maybe by a factor of 4. I'm not telling you to do that. I'm just saying I'm going to do that. I've seen studies with vitamin D, acute COVID, in the tens of thousands IUs. I
was reading some studies this week, yeah.
Yeah, I'm not going to do that day in, day out. I mean, you don't want to go over about 5,000 IUs a day. But, yeah, you bet your butt I'm going to do that. So my son had COVID about 3 weeks ago, and I'm like, our usual vitamin D that we take this time of year just for, general immune and mood and everything else and strength. I mean, vitamin D is also linked to strength and testosterone and a few other things, at least indirectly. Let's up that a lot right now, just to make sure. So, yeah, even my wife and I, being living in the same house, somehow we did not get it. Or if we got COVID, it was asymptomatic. Yep. And, I upped our vitamin D to about 10 or 12,000 a day. It was just for a couple of days. I'm not telling everybody else to do that. And again, even 12,000 compared to the 40 or 50,000 I see in some studies. But I'm not a doctor, and so I'm only going to push that so far. So there are some things that you can do, from whey protein to vitamin D to vitamin E to the fish oils. Even the curcumin that I take is anti-inflammatory. So, bonus there.
Yeah, I've been doing all kinds of stuff up in my teas. Like, I've been drinking a lot of herbal teas and things just because they said, like, if you got COVID, keep drinking hot liquids. It washes it down and kills it. And I was like, well, I'm going to frickin' do that too.
Yeah, well, think of the polyphenols.
And all that. So, I mean, I'm just drinking tons of teas and, taking my vitamin E and my fish oils and vitamin C.
Yeah. And I think a lot of our listeners, it's one of those things where maybe we can take a little bit of pride that, our usual lifestyle that protects us from anything from premature aging to heart disease to whatever, just the way we eat and move, it's going to pay benefits here. I feel like the pandemic is really exposing America for the sedentary, obese mess that we are. Inflammatory diet, French fries and burgers every day, and average people aren't doing stuff like eating salmon and taking fish oils and extra D, and maybe now some of them are. But my concern is, oh my God, a loved one has COVID. I'm just going to take vitamin D right now. Well, that's a start, but let's face it, you're not exactly saturated with this stuff. You can't you haven't earned tissue levels of these things.
Yeah.
You can't just pop a few, the day that you get COVID and expect the same response.
Yes.
All right. Well, that's going to be it for the news. Actually, that's plenty, it looks like, at the timer here. We're going to come back from break, and we're just going to talk about the new Iron Radio forums. Phil's got a lot of experience putting forums together, and I'm just going to ask him some questions.
Hello there, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah, you know who this is. So I'm here to tell you about Dr. Mike T. Nelson's new book, Why You Should Eat Keto. I don't do it because, look at me. Come on, I'm fabulous and I'm fantastic. Anyway, you should text the Keto ebook, all in one word, to 44222 to receive your free copy. Do it now!
Iron Radio is, of course, primarily a podcast. But over the years, there have been technical glitches calling for backup streaming and listeners who wanted the convenience of other sources of audio content. For this end, Iron Radio is now simulcast and backed up on YouTube. If needed, please search Lawnman07 or Iron Radio from within YouTube. There's not much video, but if you like to listen through YouTube on a Roku or other living room device, there you go. Okay, listeners, after more than a decade of joining us on the podcast airwaves, you can now also become viewers on YouTube. This is not our usual simple backup of the audio show, but rather a growing body of video taste tests covering various foods of interest to nutrition enthusiasts, bodybuilders, and powerlifters. From within YouTube, simply search for Iron Radio Taste Test or Nutrition Radio Taste Test. In about 15 minutes, we cover taste and texture similar to other products, usefulness to the co-hosts, and whether we would recommend the product to certain clients. You may even want to watch our podcast feed or Facebook group for which products are coming down the pike so you can taste test them with us. Join us for this new monthly project.
weekly fix of Iron Radio? In addition to being a popular institute on iTunes, we are also on email. Simply go to www.ironradio.org and sign up for the voluntary email. You'll get a once per week email, no more, that's little more than the show notes and a link to the audio. So go for it.
All right, everybody. We're back. It's Phil and Lonnie, and we're going to talk about the Iron Radio forums. So, Phil, you've got all the experience with this stuff. Why did this start, and how are you doing it? Just all of the above.
Oh, boy. Well, we've been talking about it for a while, and then the recent exodus that a lot of people are taking off social medias and things like that, it was just kind of time. And it seems like a good time where you're seeing lots more of these things popping up, places we can go, and like-minded people can, shoot the shit again over topics of whatever they want to do. And, we don't have to worry about, we don't know at this point. If I posted what I am today, like right now during the show, if you guys heard clicking and whatnot, basically I'm making a new post on the forum that kind of outlines what the show was about. For God's sakes, we might get edited off Facebook for saying stuff about vitamin D and this and that. Who knows? That's kind of the point it's reaching. So we've been talking about it for a while, and it's like, let's just make our own place where we can go. We can post things like this. It'll be mainly just purely lacking in trolls. That's the biggest part of making it a monetary investment to be part of it. It just keeps people like that away. You don't get spammers and stuff. None of them will pay $4.99 a month.
Yep.
So we're able to go on there. I'm moving myself more and more away from the social medias and things like that. I'll still go on there. Once this is totally up and going, I'll go and I can post something from this over there. But basically, we're at that time, and we want to invest time in something that's ours. Yeah. And, now we have a place to where if you guys as listeners have a question, you can come ask it on there, and then we have an avenue to answer you. And, it makes it worth our time too. A $4.99 investment. We don't make anything off the show, never have, but it's, it gives us more incentive as well to just be active and gives us a place. It's hard to be, we've talked about before, like we've all quit writing articles for other places even.
Yeah.
It's just become a waste. So we have an article database that we can go on, and like I've mentioned it on the Iron Radio page. I just have 3 articles up there, I think, right now, and we'll slowly add more. And those articles will only be accessible if you're a member, and then you can come talk about them. We'll have a post for every show each week, and there's a section for you to ask questions on anything from supplementation to strength training to keeping your training logs. I've got my training log going there on there. You can come on and ask questions on that and just see what we're doing. We'll be able to go into yours, say, hey, what do you think I got going on here? And answer your question. I'm not going to promise that we're going to be on there 8 hours a day, but we'll stop in there numerous times a week and answer some questions or put up some new stuff. So maybe over time have guests. Maybe, I know Lonnie put up a post about just what do you guys want out of the forum? Some kind of reward system or things like that. And the biggest thing with forums like this is it takes you guys. We can be on there all we want, but without people coming on, and the real content comes from you guys interacting and asking questions. Like I went on and just tried to start one, and I'll just go on every once in a while and start broad topics to try and spur conversation. And then we can all flesh these things out. And that's kind of where it's at. I started 1 year ago for Windler. Everybody knows I worked for a large forum back in the day. And I think you're really starting to see people are getting fed up with the usual social media platforms, and you're seeing them come to back to more targeted things like this.
I love it.
We can all sit around and shoot the shit. And there's an off-topic section. You guys can go in there and talk whatever you want.
Yep.
And you're the only big brothers that are going to be watching is like me, Lonnie, and Mike. And as long as you're not a complete asshole, say what you want to say.
Yeah.
So, and you guys can flesh it out like adults. I mean, that's part of life is, being able to converse and talk through things. So,
right.
And that's kind of where we're at.
I just wanted to add that when Phil says $4.99, he means $4.99 a month.
Yes,
not $499.
And it's set up so basically when you go in, when you go to the forum, you go to the top right and sign in, and as you're going through sign in, there's a choice there. It says subscription, and you'll either pick the $4.99 a month, or you can pick the yearly option. With the yearly option, you get a month for free, so you get $5 off. And it's just reoccurring. You can cancel it at any time, but it'll keep paying every month or every year, and then you have access. I'm going to try and this week was building this part of the site. I'm going to build the other side part of the site hopefully next week, which will be a new store and database for the shows. So basically, we'll keep the existing database and I'll link it, but then I'll put up a blog post on the new site every Saturday or Sunday when the show comes out, so you can get to it, and then there'll be a link to where we can discuss it on the forum, and then like the articles that we post on the forum, we'll put a teaser of the article on that site. So if you want the full access to it, you got to go to the forum, things like that. But then we'll have some banners and shirts and whatever you guys want to see. It's time that we start doing that stuff. So
there's even a post. I put up some stuff, and I know Phil, you did some things too. Like, why come here? Why do this? So when you think about forums, here's a quick list. I just took a snapshot. So you're going to get access to the article and audio library. Now, you can still Google this and probably try to drag all this stuff up, but, it's nice just to have a discussion about it or have the database there, the archives. We could do members only, like videos of us. I don't know, maybe in the future, after doing those taste tests and trying a little pilot of that for half a dozen episodes, maybe we just set up some cameras down the road and we can just have a video. You could watch us record the show on Saturday mornings or something like that. Maybe some like quarterly live streams. I'm not going to be able to do live streaming stuff every week or anything like that, but maybe, every so often we have like a live, like a hangout or chat, member spotlights. I love the ideas because we have definite listeners who, well, let's face it, most of our listeners, they're intermediate to advanced,
Yes.
And they have stuff to offer. So we can spotlight members, give them different badges, so everybody can instantly recognize, listen, this guy is a, Iron veteran kind of thing. We can do polls. Maybe even we do occasional, like some mega discount for a one-on-one call, like coaching call or something like that. Like there's a ton of things that the podcast can interact. What we don't do with you guys a lot now is interact, right? We do what's called push content. It's like we broadcast. But if you want to actually say something back, that's the idea, right? And I mean, I'm totally down. I have just walked away from social media. I just really have, except for putting up a backup of our audio podcast on YouTube. And that's always been the small potatoes part of what we do. At YouTube, we're just not really about that. We don't have a lot of ways to interact, and I think now we will, right? And so by having that $4.99 a month or like the yearly package or whatever, and I'm even going to give Phil the list of existing podcast subscribers, you guys will just be able to use the forums. Now, you're going to have to register with your real name. And so,
and that's one thing we request you use your real first and last name. The only time that I'm going to follow Windler's lead on this, drop us a line if you are like military, special forces or something like that, or even a police officer or something where your name just doesn't need out there. Let us know and we'll let you go with like a first name and a last initial for a valid reason. But other than that, I mean, I just like the idea of having your real name. That's another way of stopping the keyboard warrior syndrome.
Yeah.
When somebody's named Squat 228 by 7, they'll come on there and say anything they fucking want. When your real name's behind what you're saying, it kind of tampers people down at times.
Behave.
So, we just request you use your real name, and then you can say whatever the hell you want to say. But, if you get backlash from it, that's on you. So.
Well, people should take responsibility for what they say.
Exactly.
So
you're not going to hide behind a pseudonym. I think another good one is, like we talked about, the ability to, if you guys have an article that you think is great that you've written, shoot it over. We'll go through it and maybe we'll post it and we'll give you credit, and then everybody can talk about your article.
Yeah.
I'd love to get more guests and things like that. But yeah, just interaction, a place where we can interact and, answer questions more besides on here. And it'll also give us a spot where if you guys are asking tons of questions, it just feeds us. It feeds right into this. We're better able to touch on things that you guys want to hear about. If we see this topic keeps coming up, well, let's flesh this out on the show.
Yeah,
let's talk about that for an hour.
Mm-hmm.
So we can directly address things on the show via the forum and things like that. So
I do want to put out there, listen, I am looking at this a lot. Like, this is not like bodybuilding.com or the T Nation forums. This is sort of a private club thing. So
yes.
Where you take responsibility, we expect you to have some level of civility. I mean, I'm not saying, well, let's put it this way. Like, on the podcast, I'm a teacher, so you're not going to see me be potty mouth publicly much. I don't know. I'm not going to be afraid to swear a little bit. I can tell Phil is not afraid to swear, and especially probably in our forums. So, if you want to get the nitty gritty and stuff, that's kind of how you're going to do this. And I'm cringing a little. I feel like I'm pitching this like a commercial, and that is not the point. The point is interaction, and it's going to be a club like Strength Guild. If somebody comes in wearing a ski mask and starts talking smack, Phil's going to beat your ass and kick you out the door, It's a private club kind of thing. Yes, people are welcome. New members are welcome, and we're even going to be supportive of that stuff. But, yeah, it's that kind of controlled, smaller community. That's what I'm looking for,
In a place that we can target. And like you said, interact with the listeners finally. I guess I better give the URL out. TheIronForum.com. TheIronForum.com. Is the name of it. And like I said, all you'll do is just go to the upper right-hand corner, hit sign up. You can do it on your phone. You can do it on your computer, whatever you want to do. I've had several people test it out so far, and it's up and working. So you will not see much when you first go on. When you go and log in and you're just a guest, all you're going to see is why to join. That's it. Until you pay and that payment processes through, and then it automatically gives you subscribing member privileges, then it'll open up more. Then you'll see the articles and the varied forums, like we have why join, training log, strength discussion, nutrition discussion, supplement discussion, off topic. I probably need to go ahead and add one on like this week's Iron Radio or show or whatever, where I can put up, I just cliff notes of this week's show.
Oh, that's
and then
nice.
We can talk about it some more. So, because that's what I was doing during the show is when Lonnie was talking. I was just taking little notes of what each news was about. So, and then, we can talk about each show.
Cliff
notes
are
you guys
great.
want to do. So.
I love that idea because I've actually heard critiques before, like, "Oh my God, our episodes, nobody can do that." Well, you know what? Then go to the forums and check it out in like 8 bullet points.
And see if it's interesting for you to talk about. So, so that's kind of where we're at. And if you go on over, check it out. You can sign up for 1 month and cancel it, however you want to do it. So, like I said, $4.99 a month. You can cancel it at any time. You just go to the sign up page, click your subscription level, use your real name, throw an email address in, and just be aware it might take, once you pay, it's usually pretty fast, but it might take 5-10 minutes for it for the sites to talk to each other and just to give you your access. But you should just give it a few minutes and then it'll give you your access, and then from there on out it'll be fine. So
no, sounds good. I look at this. I look at this very similarly to what we did on YouTube or anything else. Let's just have a place. Again, if you get on there and you're like, "Oh, there's like tumbleweeds coming through here," it's a smaller community. You're there to kind of see what's going on. It's gonna crosstalk with the podcast, right?
Yes.
And there's going to be a limited number of other people, especially for the first couple of months, and always at least some limit. I don't want this to be some big blowout thing.
700 million people.
Yeah.
No, but the more, what I would urge people is, no question's a stupid question. The more you ask, the more it's going to spur all of us, the other listeners and us, to answer questions, which will then in turn bring up more questions, and we can all get, start fleshing out topics. So I'll do the best I can. Like I put one in the strength discussion. I just put one in there that just spurs up spur some activity. Let's talk about speed, And so I put up a little post about that, and we've got a couple of the people that that I let join early come on and made comments or asked questions. So there's a few people from the Iron Radio Facebook page that are on there. I had 3 of them come join early to help me test it and make sure it works.
Oh, great.
So I just took volunteers. So I wanted to get the bugs out before we're like, launch it. Like,
right.
Then everything goes to hell. So, right. It all seems to be working good. And if you guys have any suggestions, I mean, by all means, let us have it.
Yeah, right on. Okay, good stuff. You know what, Phil? I'll follow up with you. Maybe we could even get some people to post some audio clips. We could put a mid-show ad. If you want to record an ad for the forums, we'll put it on the podcast then. You can, because I'm assuming on the forums you can post images or links or audio links or something.
You can put little videos, and some of them, when they ask you to, like, if you're putting up a long video, it's going to ask you to usually give a link from like YouTube or something. Okay. Just so it's not stored on eating up our database
space. Yeah.
But yeah, you can post pictures and things like that. There's just a limit to the size.
Right.
And we can always change that, so we can make our database bigger.
Mm-hmm.
But
okay.
We just kind of started where we did. And then, I mean, we can add things as we go. Right now, too, I mean, there's reputation levels. So as you go up, your reputation goes up. I've got the ability to come in there. Like if I got one guy that entered in as a coach. So I have him, I can change him to a coach. He's not just a subscribing member, he's a coach. Any of my members from my gym that are in there, they're just listed as a strength guild athlete. So you kind of know where these people are from when you see them post. And we can do the same for you. I mean, if I know that somebody joins and they're a coach, or I know they're this or that, I can change them to what they are. So you kind of know the reputation of people who you're talking to.
You know what? Yes. I mean, this is going to be, maybe this is the old fart in me, but this is a return to some level of gatekeeper and editor, Like, you've got administrators saying, no, this guy is worth listening to. He's not some idiot that's just going to pontificate about, his new product or something. I don't know. So
and I think we'll do a good job of just policing ourselves. I don't foresee anybody being a complete douchebag.
No.
And if they do, I also have a feeling they'll probably get shut down pretty quick. So
right on. Yeah.
But I mean, what I want to, we're not into censoring and things like that, but just realize that we're going old school. Like if you're being an asshole, you're going to get some back. We're just not going to let it stand.
Mm-hmm.
So we won't censor you, but we'll put you in your place. So, let's just have fun. Like I said, I'm hoping, my biggest hope is that I get the avenue you just don't get out of social media anymore. It's just such a waste of time. There's no real conversations. I would love to have in-depth conversations on this stuff again.
Right. That's what forums do. I think they allow threaded discussions that don't drop off the bottom of the page,
Exactly. We can just flesh out a subject and get deep into it. It might take us months, because we're busy people, but hey, let me get back to you on that, and we'll dig up some info and, slowly flesh something out. So
sweet. All right.
But again, theironforum.com. Theironforum.com. I'll go ahead and post that today on social media as well, so people can start looking at it. So.
Exciting. Cool. All right. I guess we'll catch up with everybody next week.
That'll work. Thanks a lot.
Iron Radio is accepting donations. If you like what we do, the professors, the scientists, the bodybuilding show promoters, the athletes themselves in powerlifting and bodybuilding, please consider making a donation or maybe buying something from the IronRadio.org store. We also are accepting supporting members. So for $4 a month, which is frankly less than the bank sneaks out of your account in fees, you can step up and support a form of sort of public radio for the bodybuilding and powerlifting and strength community. The Iron Radio podcast and all of the audio on ironradio.org is for informational purposes only. If you're interested in starting a diet or exercise program, it's important to check with your physician. Also seek the help of registered dietitians, athletic trainers, and qualified exercise physiologists in order to make the progress that you need.